I was at work when my phone started ringing non-stop. It was the cleaning lady. Her voice was shaking. She said, "Sir, I don't think I am alone." I laughed at first. Then she whispered something that made my blood run cold. I just heard footsteps upstairs. And the house is supposed to be empty. That S when she hung up. And I realized, whatever was in my house, didn't he want to be heard? Hiring a cleaning lady felt like one of those harmless, practical decisions people make every day. My work schedule had become overwhelming, and keeping up with the house was starting to feel impossible. I wanted to come home to something calm and orderly, a small sense of control in an otherwise chaotic routine. When a friend recommended her, I didn't hesitate. She was professional, experienced, and came highly trusted. There was no reason to feel uneasy. In fact, I felt relieved knowing someone reliable would be taking care of things while I was away. I remember standing in the doorway that morning, keys in hand, doing a quick scan of the house. Everything looked normal. The locks were secure, the windows closed, and nothing seemed out of place. I left her clear instructions, told her which rooms to focus on, and placed the spare key exactly where I always did. It felt routine, almost boring. I even remember thinking how nice it would be to return to freshly cleaned floors, and that faint lemon scent cleaners always leave behind. There was no hint of danger, no strange feeling in my gut warning me to stay. What made it feel especially safe was the timing. No one else had access to the house. I wasn't expecting deliveries. No neighbors were around during the day. It was one of those quiet stretches where everything feels predictable. I had left the house countless times under similar conditions, and nothing bad had ever happened. That sense of familiarity is comforting in a way that makes you let your guard down. You stop questioning things because they've always been fine before. As I drove away, my mind was already somewhere else: work emails, deadlines, the long afternoon ahead. The house faded from my thoughts completely. In my head, it was empty, locked, and waiting patiently for my return. The idea that something could go wrong never crossed my mind. Looking back now, that's the part that unsettles me the most. Not that I hired someone to clean my house, but how absolutely confident I was that everything was under control. That confidence, that false sense of safety, was the quiet doorway through which the nightmare would eventually walk in. The call came at a time that didn't make sense. She had only been inside the house for a short while, not nearly long enough to finish even half the work. When I saw her name on my phone, my first thought was that she had a question about supplies or needed clarification about a room. I answered casually, expecting something simple. Instead, there was a pause on the line, followed by breathing that sounded uneven, almost forced. Before she spoke, I could tell something was wrong. Her voice was lower than before, stripped of the confidence she'd had that morning. She asked me, very carefully, if anyone else was supposed to be home. I told her no, that the house was completely empty. There was silence again, heavy and uncomfortable, as if she was deciding whether to say what she was thinking. Then she told me she had heard a sound upstairs. Not a loud noise, not something crashing or falling, just movement. Slow, deliberate movement, like someone walking and trying not to be noticed. I tried to reassure her. Old houses make noise. I said, pipes shift, floors creak, air vents pop. Even as I spoke, I could hear her breathing grow faster. She told me the sound didn't come from the walls or the ceiling. It came from the hallway. She described it as footsteps stopping whenever she stopped moving, as if whatever was upstairs was listening. That when the unease started creeping into my own chest. She moved closer to the staircase, holding her phone tightly, and whispered that a bedroom door had just closed. Not slammed, not pushed by a draft, closed slowly, with intention. I remember gripping my phone so hard my hands started to ache. I asked her to leave immediately, to get out of the house and go somewhere safe. She agreed, but her voice cracked when she said something that made my stomach drop. The footsteps were moving again, this time closer, Her last words were barely audible. She said, "I think someone knows I am here." Then the call cut off. I tried calling back instantly, over and over, but it went straight to voicemail. In that moment, the distance between us felt unbearable. I wasn't there. I couldn't see what she was seeing. All I could do was imagine the quiet of my house, no longer empty, holding a presence that wasn't supposed to exist. She later told me that the moment the call ended, panic took over her body in a way she had never experienced before. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped her phone. Every instinct screamed at her to leave, to get outside where there were people and noise and safety. She moved quickly down the hallway, trying not to make a sound, listening for any movement behind her. The house, which had felt calm when she arrived, now felt tight and suffocating, like the walls were closing in. When she reached the front door, relief flickered through her for a split second. She grabbed the handle and turned it. It didn't move. At first, she thought she had turned it the wrong way or that it was stuck. So she tried again. Harder this time. Still nothing. The handle refused to budge. That's when she noticed the faint scraping sound on the other side, as if something heavy was resting against the door. Not a lock. Not a jam. Something placed there intentionally. Her heart started pounding so loudly, she was sure whoever was in the house could hear it. She stepped back slowly, afraid that any sudden movement would draw attention. That's when she saw the marks on the floor near the entryway. Muddy footprints. They didn't belong to her. She had arrived in clean shoes, and the floor had been spotless when she walked in. The prints were large, uneven, and fresh, leading away from the back of the house and straight toward the staircase. As she followed them with her eyes, she realized something far more terrifying. The footprints didn't go back toward the door. There was no trail leading out. Whoever had made them was still inside. She could hear faint sounds again now, breathing. Maybe. Or fabric brushing against a wall. The silence between the noises was worse than the sounds themselves, stretched thin with tension. With nowhere to go, she backed into the living room, pressing herself against the wall, clutching her phone like it was the only thing tethering her to the outside world. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She waited, barely breathing, hoping that whoever was in the house hadn't noticed her yet. Every second felt like a gamble, and every shadow looked like it could start moving at any moment. The police told me later that what they found inside the house didn't fit the image of a normal break-in. There were no smashed windows, no forced locks, no obvious signs that someone had recently entered. That was the first thing that unsettled them. Intruders usually leave chaos behind. This house looked almost untouched, as if whoever had been there knew exactly how to move without leaving a trace. It suggested planning, patience, and time, far more time than anyone would want to imagine. Their attention turned upward when one officer noticed scuff marks near the hallway ceiling vent. The panel looked slightly misaligned, something so subtle I would have never noticed it myself. When they removed it, everything changed. Above the ceiling was a narrow crawl space, and inside it was evidence of a hidden life. Empty food wrappers were stuffed into corners. A half-empty water bottle lay on its side. There was even a folded blanket, pressed flat as if someone had been sleeping there regularly. What chilled me most was how organized it all was. This wasn't someone hiding in a panic. It was someone settling in. A phone charger had been threaded through a tiny gap in the ceiling and plugged into a wall outlet, hidden behind furniture. That meant he had power. That meant he had a phone. And that meant he likely had time to listen, to observe, to learn when the house was empty and when it wasn't. The officers exchanged looks when they realized that whoever this was, he hadn't just entered recently. He had been there for weeks. They pieced together how he moved. He stayed silent during the day, only shifting positions when there was noise to cover him. He used the crawl space to travel between rooms without being seen. When the cleaner arrived unexpectedly, he hadn't planned for it. The footsteps she heard were his mistake. The closed door was his panic. Blocking the front door wasn't meant to trap her forever. It was meant to buy him time to escape another way. Knowing someone had been living above me without my awareness shattered my sense of safety. The house I trusted, the space I relaxed in, had been silently shared with a stranger who knew far too much about my life. The truth wasn't just hidden in the walls. It was hidden in the realization that danger doesn't always force its way in. Sometimes it waits quietly overhead, learning your routine. They caught him later that night, only a few blocks away from my house. He wasn't running or hiding when the police found him. He was sitting on a curb, calm in a way that felt deeply unsettling, like someone who had already accepted what was coming. When they searched him, they found a small bag with items taken from my home, nothing valuable. Just personal things. A spare key, a charger, a notebook filled with dates and times. My dates, my times. He had been tracking my routine more carefully than I ever had. After that day, the house never felt the same. Even after the crawl space was sealed and the locks were replaced, I couldn't shake the feeling that the walls were listening. Every sound became suspicious. Every creak of the floor made my heart jump. I started checking rooms before leaving, opening closets, looking behind shower curtains, even glancing up at the ceilings. What used to feel paranoid slowly became habit. I realized how easily comfort can turn into vulnerability. The hardest part wasn't fear, it was guilt. I kept thinking about the cleaner, how close she had come to something far worse. She had trusted me when I said the house was empty. I replayed that moment again and again, wondering what would have happened if she hadn't called, if she had ignored the sounds, if she had gone upstairs to investigate. The thought sat heavy in my chest for a long time. I reached out to her afterward, apologized more times than I can count, and made sure she never had to step into a situation like that again. Now, I never leave my house unattended without checking everything twice. Cameras are installed in places I never thought I'd need them. Motion sensors alert me instantly. Friends joke that I've become overly cautious, but they don't know what it feels like to learn that safety can be an illusion. I used to believe danger announced itself loudly, with broken doors and alarms. I know better now. What scares me most isn't the memory of that day at how easily it could have gone unnoticed. How many nights I slept peacefully while someone listened from above. That SYILL never assume my house is empty again. Because sometimes, the most terrifying threats don't come from outside. They live quietly within, waiting for the moment you stop paying attention. If this story gave you chills, make sure you subscribe right now. These are real feeling stories you won't hear anywhere else. Mystery, fear, and twists that stay with you long after the video ends. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay alert, because the next story might be even closer to home, eyes.